Bueno, thank you, Madam President, for welcoming us, and congratulations on this amazing conference that we're having. And before I get started, I did see Arturo in the crowd, and I want to thank you, Arturo, for your service to NALEO, for all the years that you've been able to create this, and we thank you. And because of him, I have been involved with NALEO for about 21 years. And I'll tell you, the experience that you get here is phenomenal. What you learn here, the best thing about NALEO is that you get to learn from one another. Learn from one another, from the differences, from where you come from, where the regions, we're all very different. And you build some long-lasting relationships, long-lasting real relationships, especially for all of us in public service, that we know the challenges that come with public service, especially now with this panel that I'm moderating now, with the uncertainty of the times. And what we get from this is that we learn from one another. We learn, we're Republicans, we're Democrats, we're white, we're black, we're Hispanic, whatever. But we come together as one group and we learn to speak with one unified voice, even when we have disagreements with one another. So this is why it's so important about NALEO, and when we open it up, yes, we welcome the exchange of different ideas. We don't shy away from that, but we should do it in a cordial and a respectful manner, because what we've lost in our society right now, is that we've gotten to a point where it's win at all cost. Win at all cost. And if I don't win, I'm bringing everyone down with me. And that has to end. And that's what NALEO fosters here. NALEO fosters an environment of security and open and dialogue of different ideas, and this is what we do here. So I want to thank you all for being here, and it was kind of interesting when they told me that every time that NALEO asked me to do moderate panels and so forth, I said, absolutely. But then when I saw the title of this one, I go, really? This is one of the most difficult questions, panels, that we have to have, especially as a Republican. Go figure that one. But anyway, it's really important to have these conversations, and it's great to have this distinguished group of people that we have here. And I really would like to really go into the conversation itself, right from the beginning, right? And Mr. Treasurer, and I think I pose this question for all of us, because what we see what's happening across the country right now with the federal government pushing back and more responsibilities coming down to the states and the locals. And then obviously amidst all this uncertainty, how do we find the ability to lead? What is it that you do to find your voice, and not only your voice, the voice of your constituency, and how do you do that in a respectful manner?
That's a very good question. You know, I think over the years, we've all learned as elected officials that when things in Washington didn't work, it was up to us at the local level to make it work for our people. And now you're seeing a different kind of take where people are just in total, I would say, misunderstanding of what's going on in the times. And it's very basic in my sense. You know, I've been in office now 3 years as treasurer. Before that, I was mayor for 8 years. And what I realized is that today, and through the lens of a Latino myself, I noticed that things on Wall Street are doing very well, but in our local Latino communities, they're not doing too well. Everything from the disruption of you know, in our schools, with ICE, with cuts to Medicare, cuts to education. I think that now more than ever, the pressure's on the local officials in each of our states to ensure that we're closing in on that gaps. And actually, that could be a good opportunity because we know our people best and we can respond the best.
Senator Castro?
I think one of the things that's very important is, as state and local, obviously a lot of the pushback is to us, right? And this is where it's imperative that we work together on these issues. As we've been dealing with these trying times locally, I've engaged our school board members. I've also engaged our local elected officials or city council folks. Representation matters, and that's why it's very important to get representation at all levels, because that is how we build relationships, and that is how we're navigating these trying times. We, like I have in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, we have seen ICE in a continuously fashion in the city of Elgin. where I have been able to make sure our local organizations as well as our local elected officials are engaged in making sure those resources get out to those communities, whether it's Know Your Rights flyers, whether it's just basic information. I think these times are very trying, but yet we still work together, and that is one of the things that we tend to do.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President?
Yes, and I'll share a quote with y'all. I'm a former kindergarten teacher, so I'm going to share a quote from one of my mentors. Yeah. One of the people I look up to, Mr. Fred Rogers, and he said, when I was a boy, I would see all the scary things in the news, and my mother would say, look for the helpers. You will always find someone who is helping. And that's the mindset that I take into account when we do this work. Because not only is it important, to your point, for us to be collaborating, but I say this most importantly, our kids are watching. Everyone is watching how we're interacting. I say this as a father, as a former teacher, and as a school board member. It is imperative that we are working together because there is legitimate fear out there. And what people need today, what our children are looking for, is what we would say in my classroom. My classroom, kindergarten, organized chaos. It was crazy. There was 5-year-olds running everywhere. But everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone knew their role. Everyone knew what the expectation was. And that's what we need to do as elected leaders, is come in to be the orchestrators of that organized chaos, to make sure things go smooth and we are as productive as possible, because they are looking for leaders today more than ever.
Absolutely. Look, and leadership is hard, right? We all know, everyone tells us, all our family and friends think, you guys are in politics, it's easy, you guys have a great run, you guys don't even work. You work more than everyone else, and you know that, especially if you're a public servant and have a bleeding heart to make sure that we take care of our constituency. But leadership is extremely hard, and especially now during these hard times. And I'll tell you, for me, and I'm going to ask you guys the question about, tell me some of the examples when it's been hard to lead and what you've been able to do to accomplish that, or to accomplish your goals. And for me, one of them recently with this issue with TPS. This issue with TPS has been very straining on our community. And as a Cuban American who has relied on the support of so many of my Hispanic brothers and sisters when we needed their help, it was time for me to stand up and support the issue of TPS. And I was, as a Republican, I was the one that sponsored a resolution in Miami-Dade County Commission supporting TPS and asking the president to reverse his position on TPS for not only for all the groups. And this is where we have to realize, and it was very difficult because a lot of people in my community, they took shots at me, even within my own party, and that's perfectly fine. But I stood up and I speak up, and these are the things that I've been working on. Can you give us some examples on times? And it doesn't have to be just with ICE. And I look to you, Senator Castro, because for your distinguished career, you started at the local level and now at the state. Can you give us some examples of where that was difficult and how you were able to handle it?
So I would just say, one of the things is we are all leaders, right? We are facing trying times right now, but one of the things that I would say, there's different types of leadership, and sometimes a leader knows when to step back, when to rely on their colleagues. I see my colleague, Senator Omar Aquino, who's very much an expert in a lot of things that I'm not an expert in. Sometimes I'll rely on him or some of my other colleagues in the General Assembly. I think that is the important thing, right? The best thing and the most powerful thing to be a leader is sometimes know when to step back and let others step forward, because they bring a perspective that you may not bring, and then work together. I think you're going to hear a common goal today when you're talking about a lot of the issues we're facing is about working together, collaboratively working together, and leading together. Again, back to what my colleague here said, people are watching, right? In this organized chaos, we have to step up as those leaders and lead together on the issues that are important to those in our community and making sure they have the resources that are needed.
Yeah, and with all due respect to my colleagues here, I think I have the most challenging job up here. As a school board member, I get to interact with folks and I drop off my kiddos at drop-off, at walkathons. And folks don't generally come to board meetings to say, thank you so much for what you did. They're usually coming in because they're upset about PE credits, they're upset about whatever is the most challenging thing at play. And that's on top of the other work that I do in my quote-unquote day job. Now, a challenge that we had in our community in California, specifically in the Silicon Valley, it's one of the most expensive places in the world to live in. Housing is very difficult. In our area, in our trustee area, we decided to step up and say, you know what, this might not be as popular, but we're going to push this forward. We're going to build workforce housing for our staff, for our teachers, our principals. Yes, you can clap for that. Absolutely. And it was a challenge because not everyone in the community was convinced that school districts could build workforce housing effectively. We went to our community, we pushed hard, we spoke to folks that generally don't come to board meetings. We spoke to the parents like mine. My mom was 16 when I was born. My father, I joke, was a small businessman, a chemist in the pharmaceutical industry, if you catch my drift. They didn't go to board meetings, right? And
what does that mean? Wait a minute. Can we talk about that? Wait a minute. I want to. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
For another time. For another time. You probably could Google it at this point. In all seriousness, though, in our community, average rent for a 1 to 2 bedroom apartment is around $3,500. And I know that was very popular. Sorry, y'all. For us, what we were able to convince our community to come to do, over 60% of our voters approved a $1.15 billion bond for our school district, where money is going to go to build not only workforce housing, but a big chunk of that is going to go to improve our school safety, academic enrichment, and make them more energy efficient. We were told it wasn't possible. We were told it was going to get voted down. But we came together as a community to say, this is what our educators are asking for, this is what our custodians are asking for, our librarians, our nurses, I can go on, because we want our educators to stay here, and that means we have to take difficult decisions and make difficult stances to make sure we can keep our people where we want them, which is in our community.
And I appreciate that. And housing is definitely a challenge that all of our communities are facing, especially the Hispanic community, the Latino community. And it's important to recognize that workforce housing. And I'm glad that you guys are doing that as well. In Florida, we've been working, actually the school district of Monroe County has been built workforce housing on their properties for their teachers, because it's very difficult for them. Monroe County's in the Keys, so as you can figure, the Keys, the Florida Keys is very difficult to get people in, and the cost of living is extremely expensive. But those are models that we can use, and it was tough for them to lead on this, because there was a lot of pushback on using school property to build actually workforce housing, and it's worked out pretty good. Secretary Dioza?
Yeah, I think, look, I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that this country, regardless of its challenges, will overcome it because of the resiliency of its people, especially its diversity. Regardless if it's the pandemic or the complete count of the census in 2020 or the budgetary challenges today, I think what I found most valuable is to listen, engage, and communicate. And I think that's allowed us as officials to be able to show some steadiness, is also be able to show that we know that we represent them and that we're going to do our best for them. And I think that's what brings us through these challenging times.
Thank you. And Senator Castro, you mentioned about sometimes you have to lead, sometimes you have to stand behind. And the reality is that I learned that from an advocate in the HIV world early on, the HIV days. And we were trying to do something in Florida where we're trying to decriminalize some of the HIV laws because they really are extremely discriminating, especially in today's technology with the advancement in medication and so forth. But he did say something to me one day, and he said, you know, 'cause sometimes you need people to throw the eggs. And you need people to be out there and advocate and fight and yell and scream and so forth, but then you need people to create the omelet. You know, and you have to decide which role or which one you're going to be. And I think in our respective communities, if you're the ones always throwing the eggs and then you're going to create the omelet, sometimes it's difficult. I'm not saying not to throw the eggs. You have to. All right? I want you to understand that. We need, and on different issues, you can take on a different role. You don't always have to be the same, the mouthpiece on every issue. And this is where I think it's important, Senator Castro. I think that comes with the years of experience, that sometimes in order to lead, you do have to say, wait a minute, let me take a step back. There's others that can take this on this issue. And at the end of the day, makes you more credible within our communities. So with that, I look at that we are living in some challenging times. So people look to us for leadership. how do you keep your credibility, especially in a world that we live in today where we have the extremes on both sides? You have the extreme right, it's no different than the extreme left, it's just very loud. And you have a lot of us that are somewhere navigating in the middle, center right, center left. And for some of us, sometimes it gets harder and harder to be in that world where most of our people and most of our constituents are. How do you find it? What makes it easier for you? How do you do it? How do you navigate in this, Mr. Treasurer?
That's a very good question. Look, my family came over from Colombia in the late 70s, 80s. And yeah,
Colombiano.
Colombianos. Good, that's great. And I think that to me, my family came here because they wanted to give my brothers and my siblings the American dream. And I see that every single day in my community, people who come from Mexico, Guatemala, all over Central South America to fight and build a family and provide the opportunities that otherwise couldn't be provided in their own countries. Because I know that if I would have been born in Colombia, there's no way I would have been an elected official or a treasurer of a state in Colombia. So the reality is I find my strength there, that I'm here to support people's dreams, support what's right for people, speak the truth, the facts, and I think that overcomes any challenges. One of the examples I have was, and speaking just facts, is when Trump announced the tariffs earlier this year, the pension fund lost about $500 million. And it's not that you're throwing eggs, it's you're speaking the facts of what the impact had on your respective role. So there, I think that I've learned very much from the past 4 years to now. And to your point, you can't always throw eggs. You got to listen, take back, collect, inform, and just be present. You got to show up. I think that's important.
Vice President Magaña?
Yeah, I think for me, my faith has been what's been helping me a lot. I've been praying a lot these days lately, y'all. I've been doing a lot of reflection.
Yeah, just clap for that. That's great.
Because it's just been confusing with all the chaos that's happening, frankly. For me, when I think about this work, I think about little me. I think about me when I was in the classroom. I think about my mother and my father. I think about my grandparents who walked those 5 miles across the wilderness to cross from Mexico to give me these opportunities that I have today. And I say that because, and I mentioned this earlier, what I try to remember when I'm doing this work is to remember the people who are not in the room with us. The people who are on the playgrounds, watching their kids, who are making sure that we have the food that we have, like my grandparents who broke their bodies to make sure that we could eat. They aren't as politically involved because times are hard for them. It's difficult. And for me, that's what I go back to, is my story. My times growing up in the Central Valley, working in those same canneries that family members worked in to pay for school. And as cliche as it sounds, shout out to my California people. This might be controversial. This might be controversial. I'm going to quote Kendrick Lamar here. Sorry to my Drake fans out there. But the quote is, "We gonna be all right." You know, I'm a millennial. We've dealt with wars, recessions, like you name it, we've dealt with it. And the young generation, and by the way, I had a rude awakening. I went to go sign up for my Young Dems, and they're like, "You're not a Young Dem anymore, sir." Señor. I'm like, ¿qué pasó? But I say that my little brother is 14 years old. I have the great opportunity of having 2 young ones, whether it's at gymnastics, jiu-jitsu class, spending the time to talk to those, to people who are grinding every day to remind me of this work and how important it is, and remembering, like, we're gonna be all right. We're gonna figure this out. It's gonna be okay. It is chaos. It is crazy. It is, frankly, not aligned with my faith, but it's gonna be all right, and we're gonna get through this. And like we said earlier, our people will push through this. It's gonna be all right.
I agree. Senator Castro, I left you for last because of your wealth of knowledge on the local level and at the state level as well, trying to encompass all that. So,
I would say that the key word is relationships. And relationships means a lot of things. You have a lot of egg throwers right now. That's great. They're engaged. They're engaged. Let them throw their eggs, right? Sometimes you're going to have to duck yourself.
they're throwing at you.
Right. Sometimes they're throwing at you. And then let them, but the relationship part, hearing them, hearing differences of opinion, right? Being, as all of my colleagues here know, at the local level, you hear a lot of difference of opinion, and being willing to hear it without responding. Sometimes you hear that difference of opinion, but then you can give a counterpoint. It's the civility that I think we've lost. But I think I can say that one of the things is, like, I don't necessarily, when I govern, I like disagreement because it gives me a different perspective I might not thought of, right? Many of my colleagues in my own party, we don't always agree on how we approach different things, but that's okay. I think in these times, disagreement is okay. Using those and building those relationships. Like many of us, we're born and bred in our own communities, right? Being engaged, relationship with your district, relationship with your constituent, relationships with your comadre, your sister, your friend, the chismosa down the street, whatever, whoever it is. The ironic thing is...
No, la suegra, right?
Yeah,
la suegra, no. La suegra, no.
Con suegras or suegros. I say that because...
Keep that of his house.
I say that because that's important information, because you're at the ground level and you hear it, right? You find patterns in what concerns people. You find patterns in what people are hearing. I always tell new colleagues, do the work in the district, work your butt off, get to know all your constituencies and your constituents. They will feel comfortable coming to you. They will feel comfortable talking to you, even when they disagree. But at the end of the day, that discourse is very important if you want to be successful. That discourse, to your point, will help us navigate the noise and the obstruction and the mess that we're dealing with right now. Because again, we will rise again and we will move forward. These are just troubled waters right now.
Yeah, they're really troubled waters. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, that's a great quote there. I'll tell you, we mentioned something about honesty. And I think a lot of the public when they look to elected officials, they see nothing but dishonest. And it's important to be honest with our constituents. And I think what has worked with me is that even I've taken on very controversial issues, both in Tallahassee and at the local level, I've never shied away from talking to my constituents. I've never shied away from going on the radio. I've never said, I don't want to talk about that issue. If you do that, you build trust with your constituency, and you could just about do anything as long as you're honest with the people. And when you're honest with them, they reward you. And they reward you with the respect that you can be able to navigate and take on these issues, and they know that you're working for them. But never shy away. And, you know, I know that we try to embellish certain situations in politics and when we're elected, but honesty is always the best way to go when you're dealing with the public. And honestly, it goes such a long way, and it's worked out for me for my 27 years that I have been involved in politics. So I'll tell you, we're coming to the end, and I want to, I think we've touched on it a little bit, and I do believe that we will get through this. No, I know we will. Our country, when we heard the Star-Spangled Banner this morning, what a great rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, and it reminds us of why a lot of us came here. We came here for hope, looking for a better future for our families. And now look at us. Look at the positions that we have. Our families came here for us, and now we're elected officials now. We're here representing our people, nuestra gente. And we have to understand that we will persevere, and we have to get through this, and we get through this together. So I look to you and these final words, and I think some of you have mentioned it, but when we look to the future, do you see it hopeful, optimistic? How can we reassure our people and our constituents that we will get through this? And we can start off with you, Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, I think that our democracy has been the guiding light for the whole world. And because of that and its history and what we've been through, just tells me that, yes, we're always going to hit a few bumps as a country, but we're always going to get ahead. And that's the most important thing that I value from the past, the history. I'm also a millennial too, so we've been through a few bumps together, my friend. And
Nothing better than Generation
I
X.
know.
Sorry,
Yeah,
relax,
yeah.
relax.
Yeah, that's right. Generation X. There you go. There you go.
But the point is that we've seen a few bumps in our lifetime that, hey, we're here, we're still going, we're getting stronger, we're getting better. And I think that one point that everyone mentioned is, and I agree with you, that as elected officials, you can't get caught up in a bubble. You got to go out there and listen to different perspectives, get engaged, be honest, be trustworthy. And you'll see that even people who don't agree with you will respect you and shake your hand at the end of the day. And that, to me, is invaluable.
Senator Castro.
I would say during these, as I say, troubled waters, one thing to do is stay engaged, but also engage that next generation. Now we tease about X and millennials, but you have Gen Z and those that are coming before us. We need to groom the next generation. If we want to shape our future, we need to groom the next generation of leaders. And I say that because right now I took on 8 interns, but I want to expose them to everything that's government. Not necessarily wanting to be me, but also we need folks in departments. We need folks crafting legislation. We need folks in local office, because many of them want to look, oh, I want to run for president. That's great. Well, why don't you run for school board? A lot of the work happens locally, and then you can work your way up. But we have to, in order to change the course and the trajectory, is start building the bench, but also the current bench needs to push back. And I think many of us are doing that in our own way and working and engaging people and pushing back, but also being that voice for the voiceless. So we are in troubled waters, everyone, but at the end of there is a rainbow, and it may seem very far away, but we will get there.
That's awesome, John.
Yeah, and for me, again, I have pinched myself a couple times up here. Again, I'm the son of a teen mom, an incarcerated father, grandson of immigrants. Being up here, being elected, I never could wrap my mind around that. And I say that because that is one of the pieces that gives me hope. That story isn't necessarily possible in other places. And so that's a major thing that gives me hope. But to your point, the youth, that is my favorite part of being a school board member. I got to witness students debate the cell phone banning policy. They were the ones that argued in front of us. And then the board took that and made a decision. Hearing them speak gave me so much hope. Hearing them present on their ethnic studies presentations gave me so much hope. Our student board member, we have a student board member that represents students, is going to college in the fall, did not take the summer off, and instead decided to do a teaching program to teach elementary school students how to read over the summer. I speak with my little brother, he's 14 years old, and we have these robust conversations, and everything I go back to like, man, I wish I was thinking like that at that age. Yeah. And that's a common thing I'm hearing amongst the youth. We are in good hands in the future. I feel good about it. But to your point, it's going to take work. We can't just stop working and then assume, the next group, they got it. But we got to build them up. When I ran for office at 28, I pissed off a lot of people. A lot of people. And that should not be the case. During that time, we were told educators need to run, young people need to run, people of color need to run. And I remember saying, check, check, check. Why aren't you endorsing me again? Oh. I say that because the young people don't have that political capital, don't have that support, and it takes the people in this room to make sure that happens so that future generations can continue to do this work. So please, 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 hire and pay those interns. I'll say that. Give people opportunities to get involved, because if it wasn't, a senator took me under their wing and actually told me to run eventually. And that was what motivated me to say, you know what? Maybe I should do this whole elected office thing. So I say that. I have a lot of hope with the future generation and hope with the people in this room that we will shepherd the next generation to be the leaders of tomorrow.
I appreciate that. And with that, I'll tell you, it's great comments. And it really is about shepherding the next generation. And I give millennials a hard time because I have so many millennials around me, so it's fun to take shots at millennials. But the reality is that the only way we're going to get through all this is by working together and by educating the next generation. And the way we do that is bringing people under our offices, whether they're paid internships or not. I, for one, started because of Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Layton's internship program. And she's the one that taught me. She was an amazing congresswoman, my friends. She was an amazing congresswoman. She taught me the valuable lesson of public service and about being truthful to your constituency and putting your constituency first. And that's the way that we'll get through this. And it's really by educating the next generation, bringing them in. You all have the ability to do that. Don't forget where you come from. Remember your roots, remember your people, remember the struggles that your parents went through to ensure that you can be in an elected position, and use that voice accordingly and as you see fit. I remember when I first got elected to the legislature in 2000, and people came up to me and my father and I said, "Your father must be so proud of you." My response was completely the opposite. I'm proud of my dad. To think about that this is an exile that came to this country without speaking the language, and barely speaks it now. But bueno, ya tiene 93 años, he doesn't have to speak it, you know, so God bless him. But to think that this man and my mother, who worked in the factories for so many years, were able to come to the shores of this country and sit with him on the floor when he was getting sworn in, what an accomplishment for him. It wasn't my accomplishment. It was an accomplishment for him, and that's what we always have to remember. So with that, as we talk about educating the next workforce, educating the next generation, I'm going to take a little personal privilege here and talk about the Holocaust learning experience that I've been working with them for quite some time. And they really are doing great work in our school system. So all of you that are in education and in schools, talk about leading the way by stopping bigotry and hate, because we have to stop bigotry and hate wherever it creeps up. And we have a booth out there, so if you can stop by and say hello and see if we can help you in your own school district. So with that, I want to thank the panel for your genuine discussion and frank conversation on these difficult times. And we really appreciate you, and thank you.
Give it up for our moderator as well.
Thank you. So who's next, Madam President? Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a council member from the city of Downey, California, and NALEO President, the Honorable Claudia M. Frometa.
Thank you to our panelists for this morning's plenary discussion on such a critical topic of how we deliver results amid such a changing and uncertain political and policy environment. Before we break, I know you all are wanting to move on to the rest of the program, but I want to let you all know about an exciting opportunity we have on site for the first time ever. Outside of the registration area, you will find a video station where you can share your story. We want to hear about you and your family's immigration journey, the challenges facing your community today, and how NALEO has helped make you a better leader. I also want to remind you all to join our informative and timely breakout sessions. Those will begin at 10:30 on the 7th floor. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Enjoy your time here in Atlanta at the NALEO 42nd Annual Conference. Buenos días.